Hi, everybody. It's 1 o'clock, so I think we'll go ahead and get started with today's webinar. Today we're going to be talking about healthy habits, 10 healthy habits for wellness and weight management. My name is Anna Jones. I'm a registered dietitian, and I work with clients both individually and in groups to help them make healthy lifestyle changes to meet their goals. So I help people with weight loss, if that's their goal, or for some people it's reducing medication or just trying to eat better and healthier. So just all depends on the client, and just work to help them achieve their goals. I want to thank everybody for being here and taking time out of your day to come hear about some healthy habits. If you will, please hold your questions until the end. I might halfway through, if I can remember, I might give you a chance to ask a question if you have it, but just to save time and to keep me from having to look back and forth at the monitor, if you will, just hold your questions until the end, okay? We're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so especially this time of year, we all sort of get back on track, or we try to anyway, when it comes to eating better. And for a lot of us, weight loss is on our minds, or like I said, just getting healthier in general. And after sort of an extreme, busy, kind of hectic, happy for a lot of people time of the holidays, where there's so much food around and parties and socializing and that sort of thing, we kind of, when it hits January, we're ready to sort of get back on track. And so when it comes to that, a lot of us choose extreme sort of ways of going about that. But what I know in working with clients and what the research shows too is those extreme diets and fads really just aren't the answer. For a lot of people, they work temporarily. And you can maybe think of yourself in this scenario. Have you tried some sort of drastic thing? Maybe it was as drastic as the cabbage soup diet, or, some other thing where you thought, okay, I can do this for a few days, and the weight, maybe comes off, maybe 5 pounds or something, but then you see that weight come right back. So what I do with clients is try to work with them to help them not only lose weight, but keep it off long term. And what I firmly believe has to happen is really to take a good, honest, hard look at habits and what you do day in and day out, and how you can positively impact those habits. So what can you do, what can you focus on this week to kind of try to make those habits healthier? So that's some of the things we're going to talk about today. I've kind of broken down what I think are some of the most important habits, but also what research has shown are some of the most important habits as far as people who have lost weight and kept it off, and also people who have never struggled with their weight at all. There are 2 ongoing studies that are kind of looking at both of those populations, and so we've really been able to get a lot out of those 2 populations as far as habits go, and what do those people, the people who have lost weight, kept it off, and then those that just kind of have never had weight issues, and being able to look at them, we've kind of been able to glean some habits that we might all could learn from. So here I've given you sort of a rundown of healthy versus not so healthy habits, and I thought we might take a minute and give you a chance to kind of score yourself with these habits. So you'll see on the left column are healthy habits. Things like grocery shopping weekly, planning meals and packing lunches, cooking at home a majority of the time. So a rundown of those. So if you will, just kind of work with me on this, and I think you'll be able to kind of sort of see your own individual habits and where they lie in regards to these. If you'll give yourself a point, just kind of do a quick rundown of each of these. Let's see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on each side of the column. So if you can sort of give yourself a point for each of the ones on the left, give yourself a point for those, but then the ones on the right, those are kind of take away a point. So those are kind of negative points. So the healthier habits are good things we want to continue, or if you don't see yourself there, then maybe those are the things you need to work on. And that's really what I do with clients, is breaking these things down. And it's easy to say, okay, yeah, I want to eat fruits and vegetables. But what I do with clients is kind of breaking that down and looking at, well, how are we going to do that? And strategizing very specific ways of really making it happen. So I'm going to give you just a minute to do that rundown. Maybe you've been doing it while I talk. But just kind of give yourself a score quickly, maybe make 2 columns, 1 through 10, and kind of score yourself and see what you come up with. And I'd like some feedback on how y'all did when you get through. I'm just going to give you a few minutes on that. And if you would, when you get done, maybe shoot that to me in the comments section if you come up with a score. And then once I start seeing those, I can share that with you. Let's see. Okay, I got somebody responded and said 10 of 10 healthy habits but still can't lose weight, ARG. So that's when, you know, maybe working with someone, and either it's me or somebody else, you might sort of look a little more deeply into those habits and figure out, you know, how could I change that? Or what, you know, sometimes I know with clients, they think sort of they know they're on the right track, but it helps to have sort of an outsider come and kind of look at the overview of what you're eating and when that occurs and the circumstances around that. And that's sort of, you know, again, what I do with people is kind of breaking those all down and sort of making suggestions how you might change those. But thank you, Barbara, for your comment. Let's see if we have anybody else. If you can do a rundown of these healthy habits. Anybody else want to make a comment? Okay, I got one more. Let's see. 9 healthy habits, 1 or 2 unhealthy, not losing weight, tracking intake via FitnessPal app, thyroid issues. So, of course, you know, thyroid issues can be a problem. It also matters too, and you know, maybe y'all can respond to this, but it takes a while too. I know we can get impatient and think, okay, I've been doing these healthy habits for 2 weeks, and why have I not seen results? And it takes time sometimes. It takes our body time to adapt and really to start to respond. So give yourself time. If it has only been, you know, a little while, even 2 or 3 weeks, you know, stick with it. It's certainly not hurting anything to have these healthy habits. It's only helping you. So, but someone did mention thyroid issues, and that can definitely be, you know, a factor. So knowing that is a good thing. So let's see. I got a 3 from someone. This little comment box is about 3 centimeters wide. It's hard to read. So I do a lot of them, but I'm inconsistent. So that's huge too. You know, you may, and this list can be a little overwhelming. So you don't have to, especially if some of these healthier habits are new. And if you look at the healthier habits may be new to you, and then the not so healthy habits are sort of things you've been doing for, you know, years possibly. And so it takes time to start to incorporate these healthy habits. And, you know, that inconsistency that was mentioned is really a factor. So it's breaking those habits down and really trying to focus on, well, where am I specifically inconsistent and how can I change that? And what could I do to sort of improve that? And not even in huge ways, but just in small ways. And you can kind of build on that over weeks' time. So I think we're going to move on unless somebody else has a comment or their score. And you're welcome to come back to this too. I think it's just a good, you know, list, a rundown of general healthy habits and what you should be focused on. And then we're going to kind of go more specifically into some of these, like, for instance, the eat balanced meals. That's one thing that I work with clients on all the time, and it's a very sort of simple concept that a lot of people, I find, are missing. And so if we could just focus there on getting balanced meals, then that goes a long way in helping with weight loss or whatever your goals are. So we're going to talk about specifically what does a balanced meal look like and what does that mean. All right, so we already talked about this, your score, and what's one habit you can change. And as we go through this webinar, you might start to notice things that maybe you can work on. And so maybe you're taking notes or whatever, you might jot that down and start to think about, how you might do things a little differently if you're not seeing the results you want to see. So this first point, get ready. So a lot of people that come to me, they are, I ask that question, are you ready? And a lot of them, I even have them fill out a little questionnaire, some questions to ask themselves. But a lot of people are ready to lose weight, or they're ready to get healthier, or ready to fit into those jeans, or whatever it is, but they're not necessarily ready to make, lifestyle changes. And so it's key to make sure that you sort of have everything in place in order to help you, just become ready. And that may involve, making sure your family's on board and helping you, whether it's your spouse or your kids or whatever. Sometimes we can have people who sabotage us, and maybe not in a, in a hateful way, but like coworkers, for instance, may say, oh, come on, you can go out to lunch, or you can have that piece of cake, or, whatever it is, and they tend to sabotage us. But if we can kind of think about those situations before we get in them, then that's helpful. If you're interested in seeing those questions, like I said, that I have clients think about, just to kind of determine your readiness, you can Google, I have a blog, it's annajonesrd.com, which is right there in the right bottom hand corner of your screen. If you'll go there, or just Google, are you ready, Anna Jones RD, and that blog that I wrote will come up, and it's just a rundown of kind of the questions that are good to ask just to kind of assess your readiness. And the other part of sort of getting ready is really determining what's going to motivate you. So what's going to keep you going, not just for this week or next week or just through January, but what are the deeper, sort of motivating factors that are going to help you stay on track. So, what motivates you? Your kids, your grandkids, just being able to do the things you want to do. What is it, sort of the deeper thing that motivates you? And you may think about where you see yourself in 10 years. For some people, just reflecting on that, just even for a few minutes, can really be eye-opening. If you were to just continue along the track you're going now, how does that look in 10 years? And how might you change that? I also wrote a blog about sort of this concept of finding your why, and about creating a personal wellness vision statement. And I think this is helpful. So there are going to be times where we get distracted, or we have busy weeks where things don't go, as well as we want them to, or whatever. We don't get the exercise in we want to, or whatever it is. And so having this personal wellness vision statement is really your sort of that why, of that deeper reason why you want to make change and why you want to continue with the changes that you've already made. And so if you are interested in reading that blog and just some help on sort of creating that personal wellness vision statement, you can also just Google finding your why and then Anna Jones RD, and it should pull up that blog that I wrote. I had one client do this, and she wrote out her statement, and she printed it out, and she has it in multiple places so that she's reminded on a regular basis of why it is she's going to go about her day, and sort of keep that, that statement in mind. So she has it on her bathroom mirror, and she keeps a copy with her, while she's working. And so really having that there as a reminder, so that when times get tough, because they will, we all have distractions, and we all have, sort of things that get in the way a lot of times of our efforts to, to live healthier. And so having that statement can really help to motivate you when things get a little challenging. All right, next sort of healthy habit is write it down. Keeping a food diary, we know, I've seen it over and over with clients, the research supports it, that keeping a food diary is one of the most proven effective ways to change eating habits. So it increases awareness, it keeps you accountable, it makes you really just think more about what you're eating and how much. There's so many different ways to go about this that I can't impress upon you enough. And it's not something you have to do forever and ever, but while you're trying to sort of learn a different way of eating, or just to learn your patterns and things that you may sort of miss, things you do day in and day out that are contributing to, not being able to reach your goals. So what we know is that people who are the most successful with weight loss have, a food record of some sort as their tool. So it may be something you do for a while and you feel like you're good. I've had a client come and she was keeping a food record, but she just kind of figured out, you know what, I kind of have this. And I just made sure that we talked about, if you feel like you get off track, this is a great place to return to, because it's just a positive thing. So just some tips on keeping a food record. Try not to wait till the end of the day, because we just tend to forget what we've eaten and how much. And so if you can, record that in whatever way, right as you're doing it or right after, then it's just going to be more accurate. Be honest. That's another thing. You're only being dishonest with yourself if you don't really write down, or keep track of exactly what you're eating. So it's important, of course, to be honest. Recording emotions can really be helpful too, and not all food records have a place to do that, but I think recording emotions is a huge part of it. For so many of us, we know what to eat, and we know, how much we should be eating for the most part, but it's those emotions. I see over and over with people, struggling with emotional eating. And so if you can kind of start to see patterns in emotions, and maybe you eat when you're stressed, or you eat when you're, bored, or whatever it is, you eat for other reasons besides just hunger. And so without sort of recording that, it's going to be a little more difficult to see. So if you can record those emotions, then that's going to be helpful. Use whatever method works. There's so many great apps, of course. So many clients of mine, and I know somebody already mentioned in the comments section about using MyFitnessPal. My Net Diary is another one. Lose It is another one. I could go on and on and on. There's so many great apps, and it doesn't matter which one you use. It's what works for you. You also could just write it down in a notebook, or a client shared with me a little book. It's called, and I think I've shared this in previous webinars, but it's called I Love My Food and Exercise Journal, which is an awful name in my opinion, but it's a great book because it not only has you record what you're eating and how much, but it also has you record your emotions and hunger and fullness. And hunger and fullness is something we're going to talk about in just a little bit, but something that a lot of us don't even think about when we go to eat. How hungry was I and how full am I when I'm done? Because if we're most of the time, or even often eating when we're not truly hungry, or sort of stopping when we're overly full, then that could be a difference of just changing that. But a lot of that is just awareness. And so that's what I love about that book, is just kind of, it helps you to become more aware of when you eat, how hungry you were when you started, how full were you when you were done. So that one's called I Love, and it's like I Heart My Food and Exercise Journal, and you can find it on Amazon, and I think it's like $9.75 or something like that, so reasonable. All right, so moving on to number 3 is eat balance. So as I said earlier, we're going to talk about exactly what balance means. So half your plate in produce, so that's fruits, and vegetables. It doesn't have to be both. I get that question a lot, but these are non-starchy vegetables. Things like leafy greens, broccoli, cauliflower, all of those sort of non-starchy vegetables should fill half your plate. A quarter of your plate can be whole grains or starchy vegetables. And you notice the or there, whole grains or starchy vegetables. And then a quarter of your plate with lean protein. And then plus some healthy fats. And fat a lot of times just kind of comes along for the ride. But as much as you can move towards healthy fats like olive oil, canola oil, avocado, healthy fats are in nuts also. But if you can picture a plate, and I'm going to show you a picture of that in a little bit, you can try to, sort of design your plate to match this, then it just has so many benefits. So it gives you energy when you eat. It decreases cravings. So many people struggle with, issues with appetite and cravings. And in this way of eating balanced really helps to give your body what it needs so that you have energy, it's fuel for your body, and you're not constantly craving more. Really just leaves you more satisfied. So this is a picture sort of a plate and how it should be designed. So if you look at this, and maybe we'll pause for a second and have y'all comment. When you look at this, is there maybe a spot that you're not incorporating, or an area you might be able to change? So a lot of people, what I see is the produce side is either negligent or is only maybe a quarter of the plate. Or the whole grain section is all white stuff, white potatoes or white rice or white pasta. Those are just some, or white bread, those are all just some examples. So could you possibly mix in whole grains? Another thing is portions. Are your portions out of whack? When you look at this plate and you think about how you normally eat, maybe you think about, maybe you just had lunch, and you think back to your lunch and how, when you compare what you ate to this plate, how does it compare? So does anyone have any comments on any of that? I'll give you a second. If you look and compare, let's see. Anybody have any comments on the plate and how you sort of, if you think about what you eat, or maybe it's not lunch that you think about, maybe you think about breakfast and how your breakfast, kind of when you compare it to this, were there certain parts that were missing, or certain parts that the portions were larger than than they needed to be? Anybody have a comment? I love to know y'all are out there listening. I'll wait and just see. Okay. Somebody's saying they miss the produce. So that's a common thing. A lot of times we completely miss that produce, especially I find at breakfast. That's an area that a lot of people miss. And so figuring out how you can incorporate those fruits and vegetables. And it's not just because they're healthy, which is a great thing, of course, but they serve the purpose of filling us up. They're low in calories, but yet filling. And so that's the whole thing about filling that half a plate with your fruits and vegetables, is it helps to fill you up. So that's the one area that I see that people can kind of work on. Another one, like I said, is the grain area. A lot of people, their portion of grains is, maybe fills an entire half of the plate, and maybe it's white grains instead of whole grains. So just making changes in that area can really help. All right, so I got another comment. Does fruit count as produce? So for breakfast, would eating fruit be acceptable? Yes, absolutely. Like you can see in the picture, fruit is part of produce. Vegetables and fruits are great. You can see, though, that the vegetable section is a touch bigger than the fruit section. And the reason for that is that fruits have carbohydrates more so than vegetables. And carbs are not bad. Contrary to popular belief, carbs are a good thing, but we want to make sure we're eating them in appropriate portions. So if we can lean towards more non-starchy vegetables than fruit, in general over a day's time, then that's awesome. But fruit is a great source. So for instance, and I don't know what you ate for breakfast, but one of my favorite breakfasts is oatmeal with walnuts and blueberries. And I keep the blueberries in a bag in the freezer, so they're ready for me and ready to go when I need them. And that's the produce part. So I've got my oatmeal is the whole grain, and then I've got the walnuts that are the healthy protein, and then I've got the blueberries that are the fruit. So that's a balanced meal. Let's see, where would something like quinoa fall on the plate? So that's a whole grain, but the great thing about quinoa is that it's high in protein too. So it kind of would be both a healthy protein and a whole grain. But I do want to caution you, even with whole grains, be careful with your portion sizes. So a portion is like a half a cup. And if you start to look at, and I'm going to show you some ways that might be helpful in kind of keeping your portions in check and remembering this sort of plate model. But whole grains, although they're healthy and great, if we eat too large a portion, then the calories add up. So, if you haven't looked at kind of the label on whole grains, they're not calorie free. They're healthy. They, tons of nutrients. They, lots of fiber, but they're not calorie free. So you still have to be mindful of portions when you're eating them. But quinoa is a great, like I said, high protein, whole grain source. And so that would fit in that whole grain section. And sort of halfway between. And of course, foods are combinations. Not everything fits sort of perfectly in these little areas. And so just sort of, having this idea of the plate is helpful. All right, so I gave you some real life pictures of different foods and this idea of balance. So my lunch that I had a few days ago is there on the bottom left-hand corner. And it's Salisbury steak with, I found little multicolor little potatoes that we roasted in the oven. And then someone had told me about roasted green beans. I love roasted vegetables, and you could pretty much roast anything and it's delicious. But I had never done green beans, but we did, and I did them with mushrooms. And roasting is one of the easiest things you can do. A little olive oil, salt, pepper, you throw it in the oven at 425 and you're kind of done. So that just kind of gives you an idea of one of my meals that I've eaten, and then these are other examples too. So just sort of real life examples. This is what I was talking about as far as guides to help you kind of keep this plate in mind. There's a company called Precise Portions, and I don't work for Precise Portions or have any, I'm not invested in their company or whatever, but I think it's a great tool. And the plate on your left is actually a China plate. It's microwave safe. It can go in the dishwasher. But it's just a good sort of reminder of these, different categories or these different sections of the plate, and just helping you remember that, because it's easy to kind of get away from it. The one on the bottom right is more of a to-go thing. So if you're taking food to work or that sort of thing, then this is a great way to kind of take that along with you. It has a little top that goes on it, but again, it's just a divided kind of plate that helps you to keep those portions in mind. And that's preciseportions.com. And you can actually also find, I'm a big Amazon shopper, but you can also find those on Amazon too. All right, number 4, eat breakfast every day. So this is another place where a lot of people have trouble. Either we skip breakfast or we don't eat a good breakfast. It's not balanced like I was just talking about. But what we know is the healthiest, most successful weight losers eat breakfast. So the people who lose the weight, keep it off long term, eat breakfast. And why? There are all those reasons there. It helps to, stoke your body's metabolism or your body's calorie burning furnace. It sets you up to eat better. So what we've seen in research, people that don't eat well in the morning or skip breakfast altogether tend to have more cravings later in the day. breakfast eaters tend to eat fewer calories and less saturated fat and cholesterol later in the day. And we've also seen that skipping breakfast is associated with less activity. So for all those reasons and many more, I cannot say enough how important breakfast is. And starting it off, basically starting your day off on the right foot is just critical to eating well the rest of the day. I talk to people all the time, they skip breakfast, they're too busy, they, wait until maybe 10 to have, then they're tempted by maybe once they get to work, there's bagels or donuts or something in the, at the office, and so they tend to overeat that, and so it just creates sort of a domino effect throughout the rest of the day. So eating breakfast is super important. So what is a healthy breakfast? I already kind of talked about, the idea of balance, but some whole grain carbs, some lean protein, and that could be eggs possibly, or yogurt is a great source of protein in the morning, a fruit or vegetable, and some calcium. So again, with those fruits and vegetables, and we're going to even talk about that more, but that's an area in the morning that tends to be challenging. But, like we talked about, fruit's great, or mixing eggs with different sorts of veggies. So maybe you roast vegetables for dinner, a good, assortment, and maybe you chop some of those up and add them to an omelet, or sort of do a scramble with eggs. And all of that is a great thing to include in the morning. All right, some other examples: banana with cottage cheese. Cottage cheese is also a great source of not only calcium but protein. And then some almonds, apple walnut oatmeal, smoothies. I know I could do a whole talk on just smoothies and whether they're good or not great. And you can do balanced smoothies, but I way prefer people to eat their food rather than drink it. And what we know is if you compare a smoothie that has the same amount of calories to an actual food that you have to chew with the same amount of calories, we tend to be more satisfied with real food that we have to chew than we are with something that we drink that's already sort of processed for our body. So just keep that in mind. I know, smoothies have a place and they can be good in a pinch, but if we're sort of relying on smoothies all the time for our nutrition, it might be good to kind of take a look at how you could do that differently. And then that breakfast burrito is kind of another, like I was just saying, some leftover veggies, or, I do spinach in our eggs, and that on a whole wheat tortilla or a corn tortilla with a little shredded cheese is all balanced. All right, number 5, choose nutrient-dense foods. So what is a nutrient-dense food? It's foods with lots of nutrients compared to the number of calories. So a lot of us have this switched up. We eat calorie-dense foods and not nutrient-dense foods. So if you think about pizza or, going out to eat, what we often find are not nutrient-dense foods. And the great thing about eating, more nutrient-dense foods is we can actually eat more instead of less. I'm sure you've heard, well, how do you lose weight? Well, we eat less and we move more. Well, there's so much more to it than that. And actually, when you're eating nutrient-dense foods often, you can eat more. You can fill your plate with those fruits and vegetables. And I'm going to show you a picture here in a minute that kind of exemplifies that eat more instead of less. So many of us, when we go to lose weight, we just think, okay, I'll just eat less of sort of the not so great for me food. And we tend to be hungry all the time because we're not filling our stomach with good, nutrient-rich foods. So the more you can sort of move towards that, the best. And the way to do that is basing your meals on that concept of balance, but then also, just on real whole foods, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, beans, lean meats, nuts and seeds are all good nutrient-rich foods. So this is a picture, like I said, from a book that the whole concept is this nutrient-rich or nutrient density. It's called the volumetric diet. And so this picture, the calories are the same in these two meals, but you can see, if you think about which one would you be more satisfied with, which one would fill you up more and last longer, do you think? But remember, same amount of calories, but you can see two completely different meals. And so this is exactly what the nutrient, eating nutrient rich is all about, or nutrient dense, is eating more food, but it's good for you food that actually lasts and satisfies you longer. Oh, and I just lost. Hang on just a second. Let me see if I can get this back. All right, there we go. All right, no idea what just happened there. All right, this next point, include a fruit or vegetable at each meal. So again, we've talked about that already. That goes along with that whole concept of balance, and as much as you can work towards, and it's not perfection, and I've had people ask me, well, you mean at every meal I have to do that? And yes, at every meal, that should be our goal, sometimes it may not happen, and that's okay. But if we can just make it a goal to fill half our plate, then like I said, it provides nutrients for our body. They're low in calories, but it helps to fill you up. So sometimes I help clients just focus on one meal at a time. So we start with breakfast. Obviously, we already talked about how important breakfast is. And so just focusing there to start with is a great place to start. How can I incorporate fruits and vegetables into my breakfast? And then once you sort of are doing that and you feel consistent with that, then you move on to lunch. And that's just a sort of a good gradual way to start to incorporate that. All right, number 6, plan ahead. So planning is a huge part of what I do with clients, is just helping them sort of break it down. And so much of, eating well is about planning well. And so if we don't have a plan and we get to the middle of the week and we don't know what's for dinner, then the likelihood that we're going to order out or go out, or not eat something particularly healthy is just more apt to happen. So having a plan is really just critical, and really it's a habit that you have to form. So some of the things I talk with clients about, you really just want to make it easier. You want to make the planning not a drudgery. And in the end, in the beginning, of course, just like with any habit, it takes some effort and it takes some energy, but after it becomes a habit, then it's just what you do. So things like making a list of easy go-to meals. So I have a master list of meals that I keep for our family, so that when I go to plan my meals for the week, I know what we like. I don't have to recreate that. I have tons of cookbooks and I have websites I like and that sort of thing, but I don't have to go to all of those in order to know what we're having for dinner and to make that plan, because I keep mine in the notes section of my phone. And so I have them right there. If I'm in the parking lot of Publix, then I can kind of go to that list and know exactly, what we're having for at least, I say the next point is plan meals in advance for the week. But if it's overwhelming to think about planning for 5-7 days, just think 3 days out, 3 or 4 days out. And more than likely, you're going to need to go back to the grocery store for some, staple thing. So even if you can think 3 or 4, nights out, and don't forget lunches and snacks and things like that. But even if you can just plan 3 to 4 days out, then that's going to be far better than, you getting to Tuesday night and you have no idea what you're having. So another suggestion that I think has been just, sort of life-changing for me and our family is having theme nights. And I've had other clients that have put this into practice, and they said it's amazing that it's really just changed how, the difficulty of planning meals. So we have Taco Tuesday, and it's just it's what happens. We know I have kids, and they ask, well, what's for dinner? And if it's Tuesday, I say, well, what day is it? And they know exactly. Everyone likes it. Everyone enjoys it. It's an easy meal to prepare, and it just takes some of the guesswork out of it. So, and you can do all sorts of things. I mean, you can have leftover night, you can have soup night, you can have breakfast for dinner night. But just having that plan in advance just makes it so much easier. So, and it just really helps to make that plan so that you have healthy foods on hand. All right, number 7, drink water. So a lot of people don't drink enough water. We're not drinking enough. And so sometimes that signal for thirst we can confuse for hunger. And so then we tend to eat when really we could drink and sort of, hydrate and not necessarily eat. And I'm not suggesting that you ignore hunger and just drink water instead, but, we can sort of confuse that signal for thirst and eat and think it's hunger. So really making water your main choice of drink throughout the day is the best way to go. And people, I work with clients that, their habits are different than this. So it's really working to kind of change that habit. Maybe they're coffee drinkers all throughout the day. So they're drinking that caffeinated beverage with creamer or half and half all throughout the day. And, not only are they getting the extra calories from that, but then too, that messes with your appetite too. So, or maybe it's diet drinks that kind of you drink throughout the day, or whatever your choice is. If you can start to make that change to drinking more water and having that be your main choice, then it's a much better habit. And am I suggesting to never have coffee? No. I love my cup of coffee in the morning, and I would never suggest not having it. But where you see the trouble is when you're drinking, multiple cups of coffee and it's all throughout the day. So we tend to I know a lot of people who drink coffee all throughout the day like that look to coffee for energy versus, food. And so if we can and all these kind of habits are intertwined and they all kind of work together. But there's so many benefits to drinking more water. It helps to control calories. One study was done that showed study participants who just drank a big glass of water before they ate a meal, that it helped to fill them up. So, and you think about your stomach is only so big, and so if we can kind of fill that up by hydrating and fill that sort of space that we're putting food, then that helps to maybe cut back on some of what we're eating. It's important for muscles, especially if you're very active, helps skin look good, aids in digestion, helps kidney function. All of those are, reasons to drink more. So just a few tips on ways to do that. I keep a big cup with me at all times, every day, all throughout the day. And what I found for myself, I like one with a straw more than I do one that I have to drink out of a spout or whatever. And so it's little things like that making sure you have that. And it's, that my cup of water and my phone go with me everywhere I go. And so if you don't have it with you, you're just, less apt to actually drink the water. So just making sure you have it with you, and that's really making it convenient. Making different points throughout the day so that they're, whether it's having a glass at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, those are, great things that you can do to kind of put that into practice. And like I said, maybe it's just downing a full glass before you eat those meals. And some people struggle with the lack of flavor with water. I like my water plain, and maybe that's just something you get used to, but some people prefer to have some sort of flavor in their water. So, fruit-infused water, lemons, limes, any of that is a great way to just add natural flavor. There are also lots of carbonated, like LaCroix, and I know Target Simply Balanced brand has a flavored water, but it doesn't have sugar and it doesn't have artificial sweetener. So it's just infused with a little bit of fruit, and that may be a good replacement to that diet drink or that coffee or whatever that you're just kind of is your habit right now. All right, number 8, a big one, is get enough sleep. So sleep is tied to so many hormones in the body that affect how often we want to eat, our appetite, and then food choices, and how much we eat too. So if you've ever noticed when you're tired what your body craves, it's not necessarily, if you think about it, healthy stuff. When we're exhausted, we want comfort food, and that really is tied into those hormones. So a couple hormones that are involved there are ghrelin and leptin. So ghrelin stimulates appetite, and leptin signals your brain that you're full. So one increases appetite, the ghrelin, and leptin sort of tells your body, okay, I'm done, I'm full. So lack of sleep actually increases ghrelin, so it increases and stimulates the appetite, and leptin decreases your body's ability to tell you when you're finished or full. So that's exactly the opposite of what we want, right? We want our appetite to be at a normal level, and we want our bodies to be able to give us the signal that we're full. But when we don't get enough rest, then our body's sort of signals are all kind of fouled up. So, if you can aim for 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night, that should be your ultimate goal. I know on my iPad or on Apple products now, you can go to the clock, and it'll help you sort of give you a reminder when it's time to go to bed, and you can set the clock so that you it helps you to get that 8 hours. And it's really, I've only been doing it about a week, but it gives me a little gentle wake up in the morning, and it's really helpful. So you might check that out. But anything you can do just to change, those habits around sleep really, may have a lot to do with eating and what you crave. Another big one is de-stressing. So emotions and stress also have, a huge impact on food choices and how much we eat and all of that. So stress impacts, again, hormone levels. That cortisol, or our fight or flight stress hormone, anytime we have stress, that hormone is involved. So, and that hormone, cortisol, increases appetite, especially for sweets and those sort of refined carbs. So if you've ever noticed, again, with stress, if you're really stressed, what do you crave? And it may be sweets, and that's not just something you're making up. I mean, that's truly your body's sort of reaction to that cortisol, that hormone. So, and also stress fat is concentrated around the midsection. So I know men can struggle with that. Women, as we age, can struggle with that too. So you might take a look at your stress levels and how you might, impact those in a positive way. So how do you de-stress? Maybe it's by eating. I know I asked that question on my questionnaire when clients come to see me, and oftentimes I say, what's your stress level? And then I say, how do you cope? And people say, by eating, of course. And so it's great that even if you can recognize that about yourself, but then starting to just become a little more aware of, when you're going to eat and checking in with yourself. And we're going to talk about being mindful here in a second. Some healthier options for de-stressing rather than eating to cope are, meditation or prayer. And I mentioned an app that I think I've mentioned before, but Stop, Breathe, and Think, which is a great sort of guided meditation app. Yoga, Pilates, exercise in general is a great de-stressor, and it also can positively impact sleep too. Deep breathing exercises, massage, all are healthy sort of ways to de-stress. So you might think about those. All right, number 10, be mindful. Eating is often a mindless experience. So if you think about, and I ask these questions when I meet with clients too, do you eat standing up? Do you eat in front of the TV? Do you eat in the car? Do you eat in front of the computer or your iPad? And oftentimes the answer to all of those questions is yes, 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 yes. And so anytime we're doing other things while we're eating, we take away from the enjoyment of the food, but two, we also aren't paying attention to our body's signals for hunger and fullness. So we may eat until the TV show is over or until we're done on whatever website we're reading or whatever it is for those sort of external cues versus paying attention to our body. And so this is a big one of just becoming more aware of food and truly getting enjoyment out of what you're eating. Maybe just asking yourself, am I really enjoying this? Eating without judgment. So a lot of us judge ourselves for, good and bad and all these sort of words that we put on food, but sort of stepping back from that is also involved in mindful eating and learning to be aware of hunger and fullness. So I mentioned in that iHeart, my food and exercise journal, that maybe just becoming more aware of how you feel when you start a meal and how you feel when you're finished. And just sort of some awareness to that whole feeling can really be helpful. And just really asking yourself, is this food that I'm eating helping me reach my goals of better health? And It won't always, the answer to that won't always be yes, and that's not what I'm suggesting. 100% of the time that you only eat foods that are good for you, but even if it's an 80-20 kind of thing, where 80% of the time the answer to that question is yes, and 20% it's a no. And that would be, a move in the right direction. All right, so a few ways just to become more mindful, asking yourself, am I really hungry? And that sort of goes back to the whole emotions and that sort of thing. Are you hungry, or are you bored, or are you stressed? And maybe you could do something else in that moment instead of automatically. And a lot of it is just about habit, the way we're used to sort of reacting. Think about food when you're eating. So a lot of us, like I said, it's a mindless experience. We don't really think about it. Sit down and slow down. I know for a lot of people that's a hard suggestion that we don't really want to do because we're too busy, but the more you can sit down and pay attention to what you're eating, the better. Avoid multitasking, and again, pay attention to hunger and fullness. And lastly, being physically active. So being physically active, moving your body is critical to weight loss, and not just weight loss, but keeping it off. So there's, from time to time, there's something in the media about, well, which is more important, activity or what we eat as far as weight loss. Well, both really in the end are key. It's so hard to lose weight when you're just focused on one or the other. And so when you can put them together, the activity and the nutrition piece, then that's where you really see the results. So ultimate goals for physical activity, if you kind of want to know, I know a lot of people want to know guidelines, how much should you be getting? 300 minutes per week for weight loss. So that can be broken down however you want. If you think about it, 60 minutes 5 times a week, or, broken up into 2 sessions per day, or 15 minutes here or there, it doesn't matter, just as long as you're moving. So 300 minutes for weight loss, 150 minutes for general health, and like I said, short bounce count too. And just what we know is the most successful people at weight loss, and not just weight loss, but keeping it off, which I would think is everyone's goal, right? We don't want to lose weight just to gain it back again. We want to lose the weight and keep it off. And so physical activity really just has to be part of that. All right, just to recap, get ready, write it down, eat balanced, eat breakfast, choose nutrient-dense food, include a fruit or vegetable, plan ahead, drink water, get enough sleep, be stressed, be mindful, be physically active. So again, all of those things, it may be a little overwhelming, to kind of keep all those things in mind. But even if you pick one of those things and then make some strategies, some very specific strategies to make a change in that area, then you're doing better than you were before. So just keep that in mind. Remember, small gradual changes are more sustainable. So that's sort of what happens this time of year a lot of times is it's extreme, it's all in, and that doesn't last. So it only lasts, maybe through January, and then we're back to our old habits. So if you can maybe take, smaller, more gradual changes versus, doing everything all at once, then what we know is that's more sustainable. And find out what works for you. We're all different, and what works for one person may not work for you, and that's perfectly okay. It's just really being aware and mindful and figuring out what's going to work for you long term. And you might start with 3 small changes you're willing to commit to today. And that's what I do with clients before they leave from meeting with me. They always leave with 3 very specific, doable, actionable things that they're willing to work on. So it's not, I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want my blood sugar to go down, or whatever. It's how are you going to go about that? So, I'm going to have a fruit or vegetable at breakfast, or I'm not going to skip breakfast anymore, or I'm going to make sure I'm physically active at least, 30 minutes a day, 4 times a week, and I'm going to make a checklist so that I check off each time I do that. So those very specific things can really help to keep you on track. And as you become consistent with those habits, then you add new habits on. All right, and I encourage you to check out my website and follow my blog. There it is for you, AnnaJonesRD.com, or you can find me on Facebook at AnnaJonesRD. And we have a $50 gift card up for grabs. So my question to you is, the first person to answer this will win a $50 gift card. So name 2 healthy habits that you can work on in order to improve your health. The first person to get that into me will win that gift card. All right, I got 1. Got another one. We need 2. Looks like Adriana Herrera is the winner. So you win a $50 gift card. So we will get back with you and make sure you get that gift card. Thank you all so much again for taking time out of your day. I hope you've learned something and this has been beneficial. If you have any questions, you can actually reach me through my website, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a great day.